Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, November 11th, 2024. Happy Veterans Day, everyone. On the show today, news. In listener questions, does the new Premier Pass math actually make sense? Then in our main segment, it's the Whatever Happened to Coco part of Jim's history of Epcot's El Rio del Tiempo boat ride. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says that because it can see perfectly in the dark, your cat thinks your bedroom light switch controls how dumb you are. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going, Len, very well. By the way, have I told you about our cat Betty, who had surgery last month to remove a...
No, how's she doing?
Well, she had a cancerous growth on her right rear haunch, and in order to deal with it, we had to take off her entire leg up to the hip.
Oh.
Now, wait a minute. Betty is fine. By the way, we are now calling her Hop-Along.
Hop-Along Betty.
And by the way, she moves through the house with her usual speed, and also she's a sentient enough being to understand that, wow, I can use this surgery to guilt extra treats and pets out of Jim and Nancy.
Oh, so she's smart as well.
There we go. But, and again, the upside of this entire ordeal is the very next time that somebody says, wow, that costs an arm and a leg. Len, I can definitively tell you...
Have you seen pictures of my cat?
There we go. By the way, at least part of this equation, we're talking $2,700. Okay, I'll get back to you on the arm part of it. Okay.
You know what? When we had a cat, our last cat, Hello Kitty, had cancer, and you always have to to figure out am I just prolonging the pain that the cat has? But as soon as the doctor said there's treatment options for the cat. Cost was never a question.
Oh, no doubt.
It never even talked about it.
Well,
which was kind of amazing. So.
More to the point, I probably paid that same amount in treats since the surgery. So
exactly.
It's a wash.
Okay. You're keeping the tuna industry afloat.
There
Jim.
we go.
All right. All right, Jim, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/Jim Hill Media, including Jennifer Jusome, Lynn Wolf, Matt Algair, Steve Buska, Jim Summerer, and Michelle Brown. Jim, this is the Disney legal team responsible for building the Grand Floridian's annual holiday gingerbread house, which opened last week. They say the best part of the job is seeing how many Disney characters volunteer to help assemble the house, even if it means daily Zoom reminders with the villains that the house can't be put in the woods near the Germany Pavilion, inviting children into edible structures is specifically not covered by underwriting, and to please stop referring to the KidCot locations as, quote, alibi shacks. True story.
By the way, just to expand on this, I don't know if you've ever seen the Simpsons episode. I think this might have been a Treehouse of Horror that actually does the Hansel and Gretel thing. But
Hansel? Go ahead.
Okay. But at one point in this, Homer arrives at the gingerbread house and begins eating the house. And this has one of my favorite pieces of dialogue in all of entertainment history. The witch turns to Homer at one point and, "You idiot! That's a load-bearing candy cane."
I have seen it. It is a classic. One week I had no desire to do anything but watch all the Treehouse of Horror shows. Yep. I'm happy with my Disney Plus subscription just because of that.
There we go.
All right, folks, on to the news. The news is sponsored by touringplans.com. Touring Plans helps you save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World. Check us out at touringplans.com. All right, Jim, last week, Universal announced more details for the year-round Halloween Horror Nights location that it's opening at Area 15 in Las Vegas in 2025. It's called Universal Horror Unleashed, and Universal's now given us more details about 4 of the houses that'll be available. So, Jim, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Blumhouse's Exorcist Believer, Scarecrow the Reaping, and then a house featuring Universal monsters.
Now, as I understand it, the last 2 that you mentioned there, I mean, obviously the Universal Classic Monsters, that's theirs.
Yeah.
But Scarecrow the Reaping, I believe, is an original IP, whereas the other 2, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Blumhouse's Exorcist Believer, those are licensed IPs.
Yeah, so 2 new ones, two licensed. But, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is old enough that they've probably paid for that, right? I mean, there's got to be ongoing royalties, but
Gotta be.
that's basically no money to modern Universal. Also, Universal said there'll be live entertainment in 4 themed scare zone type areas. We knew all that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are some site plans and footprints out there. What's kind of interesting is that the 4, and again, this is different than what they do out in Florida and Hollywood, as in this is a permanent building line, and then these
Right, dedicated, yeah.
So these things that they're going to be doing are next level, because it's not a question of your building effect that only has to last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever.
Right.
Dedicated lighting, sound. I mean, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, you can put animatronics in there and keep them there, right, for example. Yeah.
But what's interesting is that the 4 scare zones, we'll call them that, are off of sort of a main lobby that will have quick service, an area where effectively you can wait to be called for your opportunity to get the crud scared out of you. And again, what's kind of interesting about this was always designed with a notion of, yes, it will work at night for members of the general public. It'll be something, you're out for a night in Vegas and, hey, let's do an hour or two over at the Universal Horror Unleashed. But for me, the interesting part is the morning afternoon program, where effectively, oh, you're in town for the Consumer Electronics Show, and you were near
a corporate event. Yes.
That's exactly. You're looking for a team building exercise. So, all right, let's let Phil from accounting lead us through.
Exactly.
The scarecrow reaping maze. What could happen?
It's a team building exercise.
There we go.
I love it. I'm actually going to Las Vegas to start my Thanksgiving week. I'm meeting my daughter Hannah there, and we may run over to Area 15.
Oh.
She's never been there, so I might go over and see what's going on.
Oh, I'd love to hear what you see.
All right, I'll let you know. All right, Jim, last week was the first Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party at the Magic Kingdom, and a mild surprise here was that Disney started the annual Cinderella Castle Overlay Frozen Holiday Surprise about a week early. Normally it's the second week of November, and this year it started a week before that. Any special reason for that, do you think, Jim?
That's interesting.
So while you think about it, my original idea was that those were the boxes that were at the front of the garage that they had to move to get to all the other stuff. That's just me.
Actually, you may actually be onto something here, because
could be.
I mean, you have heard of the beefier version of Jollywood Nights that's being prepped over at the studio. And supposedly, as it was explained to me, it's like we are going to be pulling some folks away from the Magic Kingdom to help get this stuff put in. So you may actually be on to something here. It's like literally, we'd love to help you, but we first need to get the Frozen thing up on the castle. It's like, do it now and come on over. It's an all hands on deck.
Oh, that literally could be it. I didn't think of it, but that sounds exactly right. Okay. Did you see that they've got ice skating now at Hollywood Studios for Jollywood Nights?
Oh, glisten. Okay. Lovely for Disney cast members, in addition to having the tan from standing outside all day. Hip injuries are now going to be...
Exactly.
You're limping. Are you part of the cast of Glisten? Yes, I am. Okay.
Yes. We're one triple Salchow away from human resources disaster.
There
all
we
right.
go.
On to listener questions. All right. This is an interesting one. Came in from Sean Conahan. He says my daughter and I have an annual trip to Disney World the first week of January, and I'm getting us Disney's new Lightning Lane Premier Passes for the Magic Kingdom. Here's how I'm explaining, quote, the math to my wife. All right, so Sean's cost breakdown is this. 2 round-trip first-class tickets from San Diego, $2,400. 5 nights at the Dolphin, $1,881. 2 4-day park hoppers, $1,316. Food and bev, budget's $1,500. And then merch, usually about $200. And Sean says, okay, $7,300 for 2 people. And he realizes that first-class tickets are an unnecessary luxury, but even coach would be $1,200. So let's say $6,000 to $7,300 is the range for this trip. All right. And then Sean goes on to say, at this point, you might be thinking, what's another $1,000 for Premier Pass? But the more you look at it, he says, the more it makes sense.
Okay.
And again, Jim, this is no negative November. So we're going along with this math.
Okay.
So Sean says, let's say the Magic Kingdom Pass is $359 for 20 attractions. We don't know the price yet because we're not within the window. But that works out to be about $20 per ride per person. And let's say the average wait in line is 35 minutes and you save 25 of those 35 minutes per attraction. That's 500 minutes saved, or a little over 8 hours. It'll allow you to park hop too, instead of spending a full day in the Magic Kingdom, saving you a whole day on admission and a whole night in a hotel. Plus, you don't have to rope drop, and you don't have to spend all day looking at the app. Given the amount of money Sean says he's spending, what's another $718? And then in parentheses he says, and I realize this is exactly the conclusion Disney wants me to come to when I think of how Disney has optimized around the once-in-a-lifetime profile of many park goers. I can see this being a no-brainer, especially for people who aren't sufficiently expert at attending the parks and just want to throw money at the problem. Do you think I'm on the right path here? That was Sean's question.
Okay, Mr. Testa.
You know what? And Sean and I went back and forth a couple of times on this. I can't see anything. You're giving the assumptions that Sean has. I can't see anything wrong with it, right? So if you assume that you want to see absolutely everything in the Magic Kingdom, then the math totally works. And here's why.
Okay.
So it'd probably take a day and a half to do a comprehensive tour of the Magic Kingdom, especially if you wanted to have nice meals, take some breaks along the way, or God forbid, sleep in. All right.
Okay.
So that extra day in the Magic Kingdom would cost another night at the Dolphin, which is $376. And not for nothing, but that's one Premier Pass right there.
Okay.
Plus, you'd need to add another day on to those 4-day park hoppers. The incremental cost between a 4-day and a 5-day park hopper for January is around another $120 or so total. So the incremental cost of the Premier Pass is now $238 total, or $119 per person to see 20 rides without long lines. And Jim, that's $6 per ride.
Okay.
Hard to argue with that, right?
Yeah, I guess my only concern here, and this is anecdotal. I mean, again, if you're on X or any form of social media, every so often you'll see the line, the lightning lane line that extends back over the horizon, and it just sort of
right.
Just for me, the notion of I paid to be in this line to have a speedy, expedient experience. And I know things happen, rides go down or whatever.
Yeah.
But even so, it's just, wow, that's a lot of money. It is. It just is.
It is. And to your point, there were times in the past month where Pirates of the Caribbean, for example, the Magic Kingdom, didn't open for the entire day. Probably, Jim, to add more magic to the Pirates. The Pirates need a day off, Jim. And sometimes you just schedule whatever the pirate equivalent of a mental health day is. You have to do it, right? And sometimes that's unscheduled.
Okay.
What would that be?
I about to put down the sword, pick up the macrame. Okay, I understand.
Exactly.
There we go.
But the other thing I would say is this. I've had Magic Fast Passes before for a day. And it's this is a first world problem, but it's actually harder than you think to use 20 of them in a single day if you start after park opening.
Yeah.
You still have to wait a little bit in lines, to your point. They're still walking.
Yep.
And just being on the 20 rides is probably a couple of hours, by itself.
Just an entertainment overload, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take breaks. So the thing that I told Sean was, you can do it, and it's going to be a great day, and you can do it in 12 hours because that's the park's going to be up at 9 to 9. But you're going to be surprised at how tiring this is.
Yep.
Anyway, Sean, when you do this, let us know how it goes.
Okay.
All right, Jim. On last week's show, we talked about the Boardwalk's new cake bake shop having a dessert named after Marie Antoinette. And we said it was an example of quantum irony because we weren't sure whether they were serious or not. And Jim, you won't be surprised to know that our listeners have a really good grasp of physics and humor. Here's an example from Beverly Newcomb. She says, personally, I think that this is the exact example Schrodinger would have used to describe irony. Instead of Schrodinger's cat, it would have been Schrodinger's cake. Beverly, I am perfectly happy to be the third funniest person on this 2-person podcast. You don't scare me.
Wow. Okay. But honestly, that is a great business plan for the cake bake shop. Literally offer Schrodinger's cake. Maybe there's a slice of cake in here. Maybe there's not. Still, give me $20.
It's a box, and you don't know whether there's cake in it.
There we go.
Oh my God, that's genius.
Yeah.
Why are we not doing this?
There we go.
Oh, amazing stuff.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, thank you, Beverly. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim finishes up the history of EPCOT's El Rio del Tiempo boat ride. We'll be right back. And we're back. All right, Jim. Last week, we were getting ready to do a redo of El Rio into Gran Fiesta starring the Three Caballeros. And they had hired a ride designer who said, yeah, but it has to be basically the Technicolor version of the ride, right?
Oh, very much so. And not necessarily ride designer, it's master animator Eric Goldberg, who was going to handle the new film elements. And by the way, folks, before we started the show today, I sent Len a photo of the original poster for the 1945 release of the Three Caballeros, which, by the way, the studio promoted as Walt Disney's Miracle Musical, which is kind of stretching it for this 71-minute long film. But what's interesting about the poster for this thing is they make it part of the promotion of this film, that the Three Caballeros is in Technicolor. And to hammer home that point, on the poster, every letter of Technicolor is in a different hue. Just sort of,
yeah.
But that's the thing. The poster itself is selling you the idea that the color for this thing is extraordinary.
Oh, everything is super saturated reds, super saturated blues, greens. Yeah, it looks great.
And to borrow a concept from Spinal Tap, all of these colors are then turned up to 11. All right, so
is that Carmen Miranda?
Well, actually, that's her sister. I want to say Dolores.
Is it really?
Yeah. Well, again, it was like the Kardashians. There were a lot of Mirandas that put fruit on their head and danced. But all right. Anyway, all right. So if El Rio de Tiempo, did I get it right this time?
You know what? You got 4 shows, Jim. You can get it done. I'm optimistic.
We literally pre-gamed before the show. Where I had Len coach me, and damn it. All right.
It's fine.
All right.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, if this ride is going to be turned into a celebration of the Three Caballeros, the Imagineers are going to have to really pay attention to getting the colors just right. So that's why Mr. Goldberg suggested that Imagineering hire Mrs. Goldberg, Susan Mackenzie Goldberg, who was a noted art director and colorist. And she's the one who did such an amazing job on Fantasia 2000's Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue and Carnival Animals. So Imagineering is thrilled to have both of the Goldbergs on this project. So it's now time to begin the redo. The ride goes down on January 2nd, 2007. And then, Len, the turnaround for this thing is startling. Again, they close in early January of that year. The Gran Fiesta starring the Three Caballeros is open to the public on April 6, 2007. So it has been down for 3 months and 4 days.
Wow.
Yep.
That is lightning fast.
Yeah. Now, that said, though, before any of this could happen, Imagineering has a meeting with Mr. Goldberg and says, look, while we also have great affection and admiration for all of the stellar animation that Ward Kimball and his team did back in the 1940s on the original Three Caballeros, when it comes to the new footage that Eric and his team of Disney animators will be creating for the Mexico Pavilion, there are going to have to be some rules. And if you go back now and watch the original Three Caballeros, Donald, Jose, and Panchito are 3 wild and crazy guys, Len.
It's basically like they're in the Navy and it's shore leave in South America.
Very much so. They're constantly knocking back drinks. They're smoking cigars, not to mention chasing pretty girls and occasionally pulling out a pistol and firing it.
Jim, this reminds me of the line that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is a regulatory agency, not a party planning unit.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So going into this, the rules that Imagineering lays down for the new animated footage is that while there could be some flirting with pretty girls, that's strictly G-rated flirting.
Right.
Donald, Jose, Panchita can't smoke, they can't drink, and they can't play with firearms. And Len, this actually happened a lot in the early 2000s on the heels of 9/11. Remind me sometime to tell you the story about Michael Eisner as Treasure Planet is in production. He comes to the...
Oh, right. Yeah.
He goes to their filmmaker and says, I'm suddenly uncomfortable with all of the gunplay and the use of knives and swords in this film. Is there any way we could change that? And Ron Clements.
It's a pirate movie in space. No swords, no guns.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's the thing. It's like, Michael, there's a mutiny. How exactly is Long John Silver supposed to take control of the boat with a firmly written note? Just sort of like,
we're gonna form a union in space.
yeah. So. Now,
right.
and what
Okay.
was interesting is Eric had actually had experience with this. Now, remember, he's the guy who animated the genie in Aladdin, and they're working on the movie, which comes out in November of '92. But August of 1990, the Gulf War breaks out, and
Right. Yeah.
okay, so now at this point, the United States and 42 other countries are sending troops in pursuit of Saddam Hussein, who's holed up in Baghdad, and it's like.
Right.
Oh, great. We just happen to have sent our next animated musical for the family in that very same...
In Baghdad!
In Baghdad.
Yeah.
So, but in kind of a genius moment, and again, for all you Scrabble enthusiasts out there, they take Baghdad and its component letters, they drop the D's, throw in an R, and that's how you get Agrabah.
Is that really it?
That's
Agrabah's Baghdad?
Agrabah
Wow.
Agrabah is Baghdad with the D's removed and an R added. So there you go. So again, not Eric's first rodeo at Disney. He's dealt with these sorts of terms of conditions coming down from on high from the Team Disney Burbank building. So it's like, sure, they can't drink, they can't smoke, they can't play with firearms. It's like, we'll still find a way to make the animation wacky like Ward Kimball did. Now, the storyline for Gran Fiesta, starring the Caballero, going to be very familiar to anyone who's experienced the Seas with Nemo and Friends at World Showcase. In fact, very interesting thing, Len. 2007, a very significant year for Epcot. It saw 2 of that theme park's attractions go down for character overlays and come back up within the same 3-month window. Living Seas became the Seas with Nemo and Friends. That opens January 24th, 2007. And as we mentioned earlier in today's show, El Rio de Tiempo?
Close.
Damn it. Closes its doors January 2nd of that same year, 2007, and then opens its Gran Fiesta in April 2007. So
I forgot that those were contemporaneous overlays. Oh, interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
kind of a big deal. Epcot getting 2 character-based rides inside of 3 months, and but again, pressure's coming down from on high to broaden Epcot's appeal, make it more like the Magic Kingdom and Disney's Hollywood Studios.
Fair.
Anyway. Anyone who's been on Seas with Nemo and Friends know storyline is Nemo is lost again, and Marlin Dory needs your help to go find him. Whereas with Gran Fiesta, as we enter the queue, we pass a poster that says that later tonight there's supposed to be a concert in Mexico City where Donald, Jose, and Pachita are going to be playing. And then we enter a boat, we enter the crumbling temple in the Yucatan jungle, and where we previously saw that Mayan priest come to life via Pepper's Ghost, we now see animation of Jose and Panchita, who are frantic because, well, the concert's tonight and Donald has disappeared. He's off somewhere taking in the sights of all these Mexican tourist destinations, and they now need our help to find him so the concert can start.
This sounds like an Ozzy Osbourne story, but just with ducks. More ducks, less cocaine. Go ahead. All right.
Okay,
All right.
I'm going to have to check with Sharon on that. But
Okay, all right.
all right. I don't know
right.
if she has a magic flying serape, which, by the way, is the device that Jose and Panchito they climb on, and it's a carryover from the original film. But anyway, they move quickly from various settings in Latin America, and they head off in search of Donald. Now. Mind you, as soon as we enter this part of the pyramid, the Three Caballeros song from the 45 film begins playing and then plays continuously through this attraction, which really amps up the energy of this attraction, not to mention finally creating some connective tissue that the previous edition of this ride just did not have from show scene to show scene.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, the Three Caballeros song is not something that Disney created out of whole cloth, Len.
Oh, it's folk music, right?
Well, it's actually a ranchera song that Disney borrowed, or I guess the term these days is culturally appropriated, and then had studio staff musician Ray Gilbert write new lyrics to. So just want to take a second here and give credit where credit is due to the guys who actually created the original melody, and that's Manuel Esperano And Ernesto Cortazara, again, kind of interesting, Len, that this attraction is borrowing a page from the story of Coco, which we'll get to in a moment.
All right.
Okay, so anyway, as for the film moments we see throughout Gran Fiesta, which again, just like the original Three Caballeros movie, combines live action and animation, Imagineering spent 6 weeks down in Mexico shooting the live action footage in places like Acapulco, Chichen Itza, and Mexico City. Anyway, Eric is working with his wife Susan to make sure that Gran Fiesta makes use of the exact same color palette and has the same stylistic detail and graphic elements as the 45 film. With the end result being this new attraction for EPCOT where you feel like you've been directly inserted into this wacky celebration of all the sights and sounds that one would experience during a Mexico vacation. And the beauty part is that Gran Fiesta ends with Donald, Jose, and Panchito in Mexico City, and the new animated footage that Eric Goldberg creates for the Three Caballeros song, in spite of the fact he's not allowed to show the characters drinking, smoking, chasing women, or firing off guns, is just as funny, if not funnier, than what Ward Kimball did back in the mid-1940s.
Jim, I think the funniest new scene for me is the one where Jose and Panchito are in the restaurant. Oh. And the waiter lifts the lid on, I think it's a turkey or a chicken. And so they're in the serape, and it's flying, right? And they're like, nope, we gotta go.
I would argue funny, if not funnier, is that moment where we see Donald cliff diving, and as he falls down and he's hitting the rocks, they do both the light and the sound of hitting the bumpers inside of a pinball machine. I mean, it's just
that's also good.
It's all just great stuff. Okay, but again, as we mentioned, Gran Fiesta opens early April 2007, hit straight out of the gate. Guests love this reimagined version of Mexico's boat ride, and as a direct result, first time in years, the interior queue inside of this World Showcase Pavilion has a steady line of people. Not only that, because the Mexico Pavilion can now start selling Donald, Jose, and Panchito plush T-shirts, coffee mugs in that interior marketplace. Retail sales at this World Showcase Pavilion go through the roof, which, by the way, Len, not unnoticed by the folks who ran Coronado Springs, which had opened 10 years early, August of 97. So they actually order this specific merch and have it then put up for sale inside of that hotel's store, which, no lie, Len, is called Panchito's Gift and Sundries.
Okay, so to be fair here, Jim, Panchito is actually from Mexico, canonically, in the Three Caballeros.
That he is.
Jose is Brazilian. Jose, and then Donald is from Burbank.
Well, yeah.
We've got one Mexican caballero in the Three Caballeros, but you know what? That's fine. It's a welcoming culture.
There we go.
Let's go with
there we go. Okay. All right. So, all right. And everything is fine till May of 2009, which is when the Mickey Mouse Revue closes at Tokyo Disneyland. So that theater in that theme park's Fantasyland section can then be retrofitted to start showing the 3D movie that Len and I recently have talked about here on the Disney Dish podcast, and that's Mickey's PhilharMagic. Anyway, the 81 animatronics that were featured in Tokyo's version of Mickey Mouse Revue get dismantled or put into storage, with the exception of 3 figures: an animatronic version of Donald, an animatronic version of Jose, and an animatronic version of Panchito, all of whom used to perform the Three Caballeros song in the Mickey Mouse Revue show.
And is this the same figures from the Magic Kingdom?
Yep. Yeah.
That went to Japan?
That went to Tokyo.
Wow.
Okay.
Talk about the circle of life.
Well, now, but what was interesting is the thinking at Imagineering was, well, wouldn't it be cool if we took these figures, which, by the way, we already own, we don't need to build them, and then installed them at the very end of Gran Fiesta, with the idea that the characters that guests had only seen as animated as they went through the ride, now, for the concert in Mexico City, emerged as fully dimensional figures.
Yeah, but in 3 months?
Well,
okay.
All right. But again, great idea on paper. Only problem is, Len, there is just no money in the budget to do this. So now, mind you, the figures get sent over From Japan to EPCOT. In fact, many was the time I was backstage at the Imagineering field office at EPCOT, which is over behind Spaceship Earth. And they're on the loading dock, no less. They're encased in plastic and bubble wrap, are clearly Donald, Jose, and Pachito. They were there for years, Len. In fact, it took 5.5 years to finally find the money. But December 4th, 2015, the animatronic versions of Donald, Jose, and Pachito are added to the attraction. And this is my own personal opinion, folks. Your mileage may vary. I'm going to say they ruined the ending of Gran Fiesta.
Okay, so pause there for 1 second, because that's a hot take. But let me just say, you saw these animatronic characters wrapped in bubble wrap on a loading platform in Epcot.
And yes, every time I was there, Len, I looked at them and I looked at the trunk of my rental car, and then I looked back and then noticed the security and just couldn't.
Jim, you were a shipping label and a CTL license away from retirement, Jim.
If it's any consolation, they shared that space on the loading dock. Do you remember in the Land Pavilion when you went downstairs into the food court, there was that cuckoo clock with the rooster that would come out every 15 minutes? That sat out. In fact, that wasn't wrapped in bubble wrap. That wasn't sealed in plastic. That thing, that beautiful piece, sat out in the rain and the heat in Florida for years. And it just, again, that was the one I actually said, this would be a mercy killing. Let me throw that.
Exactly. You clearly don't want this.
Yeah, let me take it home to New Hampshire. I'm sure the bears and raccoons will appreciate. It's 15 minutes. It's time to go eat out of the hills bird feeders. So
your three-legged cat wants another treat.
There we go. All right, but
All right,
again, again, to get back to my hot take. Look, guests have gone through this attraction, seeing all of this amazing animation by Eric Goldberg that apes what Ward Kimball did, and then they get to the final scene of this thing in Mexico City, and what they're looking at are 3 animatronic figures built back in the late 1960s, and we're not talking like the shaman in Navi River Journey, or even the Wicked Witch in the old Great Movie Ride. These things are slow, they're creaky, they don't have a tenth of the charm or the energy, the animation that Goldberg and his team, the stuff they created in 2006, which to me sort of let some of the air out of the balloon. Now, mind you, you can still see Eric's animation for Gran Fiesta over on YouTube. And in fact, what's kind of fun is if you can actually compare it to what Ward did for Three Caballeros back in the 40s. And both scenes have high energy, lots of coloring, great gags, which, again, just saying the obvious here, the current finale for Gran Fiesta does not have. But that said, Len, they did keep Panchito has guns. Mind you, they've got the gag guns with the little flag sticking out of them, but he's got guns. You could get away with that in the 70s. All right, but perhaps this will all change in the future, and need to share a story here. A few years back, Mr. Testa was kind enough to share with me a copy of a slide that a Disney insider had shared with him. And this slide illustrated the Imagineers' 6-year plan for updating Epcot. Now, back then, this was supposed to have started in 2017 with an update of Mission Space, which we got, but then end in 2022 with a redo of Journey into Imagination, which, according to the slide, was the company was about to spend over $250 million on this update. So and then
this was big. I mean, it's still on the table, but I think scaled back.
Oh yeah, but at the same time, the 1-2 punch here was we were going to get an updated Imagination Pavilion, and we were going to get another Pavilion for World Showcase, the Brazil project.
I don't think people understand how close that came to being announced.
Again, another story, but one that will break your heart. But anyway, right in the middle of the slide, supposedly come online at Epcot in the year 2020,
Yeah.
just ahead of
Yep.
Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary, was a $70 million project for World Showcase, something that was described as Mexican boat ride reconcept that would involve new IP. Which new IP? Well, they don't say, but the image on the decal on the slide showed the logo for Pixar's Coco, which had
Yep.
arrived in theaters November of 2017. So, is this idea still in the works for Epcot's Mexico Pavilion? As Mr. Schul, our good friend and partner, veteran Imagineer who works with us over on Disney Unpacked, as he always says, no good idea ever dies at WDI. And me personally, can't help but notice, Len, that as part of the Disney Parks Products and Experiences presentation at this year's D23 Expo, Disney Parks head Josh D'Amaro shared an image of a Coco-themed boat ride, which is reportedly the works for Disney's California Adventure Park as part of the Disneyland Forward project.
It's funny you mentioned D23 and Coco because we said that Panchito is from Brazil. Jim, what's going on this weekend in Brazil?
Oh,
D23 Brazil.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not saying we're gonna get anything. I don't know. I only know of a few things that are happening. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
And by the way, that tells you just right there, Len, about one of the reasons they wanted to bring that country to Florida. The Disney fans in Brazil are crazy passionate.
Oh yeah, it's a Brazil tourism to Orlando is a not trivial chunk of all of Brazil's tourism to the United States.
Absolutely. But anyway, so is it possible that much like how those Donald, Jose, and Panchito animatronic figures first had to go to Japan before they could then be installed as part of the finale of Gran Fiesta, and as Len pointed out, they started out in Orlando to begin with. Could this Coco boat ride first have to be built at California Adventure before the company then says, that idea we were originally going to do involving Mexico's boat ride, maybe it's now time to do that in Florida. Yeah. So anyway, it only took 4 parts out of what was originally supposed to be a 2-part series, but that is the history of Epcot's, I'm going to do it right this time, El Rio del Tiempo?
It took a month, Jim, but you did it.
All right, there we go. All right. But yeah, thanks to all your patience, both Mr. Testa and the audience, as the story kept expanding and expanding.
It's fantastic. I think the big challenge with doing any new IP in the Mexico Pavilion is where you're going to put the line. That really is what it comes down to.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. I mean, just the fact that even with an attraction that's built around and remember, the Three Caballeros is from 1945, but that still pulls a line. To do something like Coco, which, by the way, was just hearing from somebody at Disney Theatrical that it's entirely possible we're going to see a stage musical based on that in the not too distant future. Sure. This is something that the company believes is hugely popular now and will be hugely popular in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So yeah, I mean,
well, plus it's Halloween themed, right? I mean, it's Dia de los Muertos, so you could. You have your own built-in little festival holiday thing right there. Yeah. The issue is this, it's going to come during Food and Wine. And if you've been to Food and Wine, recently, especially the Mexico Pavilion, there's a line outside to get into the Mexico Pavilion because of La Cava del Tequila, right? So now you're going to have 2 outdoor lines to get into the pavilion. It seems logistically like that's the big challenge, right?
No, absolutely. And it makes you wonder about can they talk to the Encanto guy? I mean, because they've designed quite an impressive line for that attraction coming in.
Yeah, exactly. Have the Aztecs done anything with interior cues?
There we go.
Who do we call here?
There we go.
All right. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our most recent show talks about Africa Rediscovered, the never-released 15-minute film for the never-built Epcot Africa Pavilion, but that one of us has actually seen. And on next week's show, apropos of nothing at all, we're going to talk about the history of Disney attraction overlays. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, who will be showing off their collections of magnetite and amethyst, plus ancient toothed whale fossils at the 2024 Mobile Rock and Gem Society annual show from November 29th through December 1st at the Abba Shrine, that's on Hit Road. Jim, I'm not making that up. In beautiful downtown Mobile, Alabama. While Eric and David are doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We'll see you on the next show.
Okay, well, here we are at the finale, and I bet you know what that means.
Debbie Harry!
That's right, Debbie Harry! Yeah!